When we think about the horrors of slavery, the image that often comes to mind is one of enslaved men and women toiling under the brutal supervision of male slaveholders. Yet, history tells a more complex story, one that includes the active participation of white women in the institution of slavery. White women were not mere bystanders or passive beneficiaries of this cruel system. Many were deeply involved as slave owners, traders, and enforcers of oppression. This long-overlooked aspect of history sheds light on the intricate ways in which power, gender, and race intersected during one of humanity's darkest periods. For centuries, white women were often portrayed as innocent maternal figures, shielded from the moral depravity of slavery. This narrative, deeply ingrained in historical accounts and literature, conveniently obscured their roles as active participants in the slave economy. From the Southern belles managing household slaves to widows running plantations, white women were not only complicit in slavery but were also central to its survival and profitability. Census records and historical documents reveal that white women were among the largest demographic of slave owners in the antebellum South. Many inherited slaves through marriage or family estates and used them as a source of wealth and labor. These women viewed enslaved individuals not as human beings but as assets, a means to secure their financial independence. Take for instance the case of Louisa McCord, a Southern intellectual and poet who not only owned slaves but also passionately defended the institution of slavery in her writings. McCord's poetry and essays reflect a worldview steeped in the belief that slavery was essential to maintaining social order and white supremacy. White women often wielded their power over enslaved people through both direct and indirect means. As mistresses of the household, they were responsible for managing domestic slaves, a role that frequently involved acts of cruelty. From meting out punishments to separating families, these women enforced the dehumanizing conditions of slavery. One chilling example is that of Delphine LaLaurie, a New Orleans socialite whose name became synonymous with unspeakable cruelty. LaLaurie's mansion became infamous after the discovery of a torture chamber where enslaved individuals were subjected to horrific abuse. While LaLaurie's case is extreme, it highlights the capacity for violence and cruelty that some white women exercised over their slaves. White women's involvement in the slave economy extended beyond plantation management. Many participated in the buying and selling of enslaved individuals, attending auctions and negotiating prices. Slave trading offered women a way to amass personal wealth and maintain social status, particularly in a society that limited their economic opportunities outside of marriage. Harriet Jacobs, an escaped slave and author of the memoir Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, recounts how her mistress deliberately inflicted psychological torment on her. The mistress, consumed by jealousy, sought to control every aspect of Jacob's life, underscoring how white women's power dynamics extended beyond physical violence to emotional and mental domination. The 19th century ideal of the cult of domesticity held that white women were the moral guardians of their homes and communities. Yet, this ideal coexisted with their active participation in slavery. While promoting virtues like piety, purity, and maternal care, many white women simultaneously perpetuated a system that destroyed families and dehumanized individuals. In letters and diaries, white women often expressed concern for their own financial stability while displaying a chilling indifference to the suffering of enslaved people. For them, the enslaved were tools to secure their domestic ideal, not fellow human beings deserving of empathy. The active participation of white women in the slave economy made them targets of resentment and resistance from the enslaved. Many enslaved individuals recognized that the mistress of the house often held the keys to their fates. This dynamic bred a tense relationship marked by acts of defiance from the enslaved and retaliatory cruelty from white women. Enslaved women in particular bore the brunt of mistreatment at the hands of white mistresses. They were seen as rivals, laborers, and scapegoats, a dangerous combination that fueled both physical and emotional abuse. Yet, these enslaved women resisted in whatever ways they could, from subtle acts of rebellion to outright escape. After the abolition of slavery, white women's roles in the institution were largely erased from historical narratives. This erasure served to protect their reputations and reinforce the myth of their innocence. However, contemporary scholarship has begun to uncover the truth. revealing the depth of their involvement and the lasting impact of their actions. The participation of white women in the slave economy challenges long-held assumptions about gender and power. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how deeply ingrained the institution of slavery was in every facet of society. By acknowledging their roles, we gain a fuller understanding of history and its enduring legacies of inequality and injustice. White women were not passive observers of the slave economy, they were active agents who profited from and perpetuated a system of unimaginable cruelty. Recognizing this truth is essential not only for understanding the past, but also for addressing the systemic injustices that persist today.